Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, How Much is Downtime Costing You? My name is Tim Ferriss, and I'm the practice manager of the data center modernization practice here at Blue Mantis. I'll also be joined today by Justin Windsor and Sam Drogan from HPE. So just to set this up quickly, last year ransomware attacks increased by 93%, with victims paying out more than $1 billion to these bad actors. We've been talking with our clients for years about being properly prepared for disaster, and traditionally we've been referring to, the standby fire, flood, other localized natural disasters. But those aren't your most likely scenarios anymore. You're up to 5 times more likely to suffer a cyber attack than a fire. It's no longer a matter of if, but when you will be the target of an attack. We implore you to invest in modern cyber recovery systems so you are ready when the worst happens and you need them to recover. Our partners at HPE Zerto have an excellent offering here to help you tackle this issue with their cyber resilience vaults. So just quickly, I think many of you on our call are already familiar with Blue Mantis, but for those of you who aren't familiar, Blue Mantis is a security-first IT solutions provider that consults with our customers to assess, modernize, manage, and secure their digital solutions. Next slide, please. So we work with organizations across many industries and verticals, including SLED, healthcare, finance, just to name a few, to enhance data security, gain business agility, and optimize for cost. Our expertise covers many areas of technology, from cybersecurity and risk management to data center modernization, including networking, on-prem, hybrid cloud, native cloud, all the way to hardware and software procurement and fully managed services. Blue Mantis can help you in all of these areas. Just a quick housekeeping note about our Q&A here. Please put your questions in the Q&A area, and we will address them at the end or after the webinar as time allows. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to Justin Windsor. Justin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Thanks, Tim, and thanks everyone for joining. By way of introduction, I am Justin Windsor. I lead all of our channel business exclusive to public sector. Just to kind of, what does that mean, right? So we only work from a Zerto perspective, part of HPE. As you can see, we only go to market with partners, right? And we look at kind of what Blue Mantis has done over the number of years they've been in business. And they are, for us, one of our top partners, in the New York, New England area, right? So in working with Blue Mantis, you will be able to get our technology, which we're going to talk about here today, myself and Sam. You'll be able to get our technology at the lowest possible price point, but with all the expertise that Blue Mantis not only can wrap around Zerto from a services perspective, but everything else that they do. With that being said, I direct all of our channel business, again, for public sector, so state, local government, education. If there's anyone on the call that fits outside of that, healthcare, retail, finance, we have the teams here to support you. But really, what we wanted to talk about today is, again, how much is downtime costing you, right? We live in a world where cyber threats are happening every single day. From January to June of this year, there were 400 known ransomware attacks just in the K-12 space. The U.S. federal government is the #1 target for cyber threats, as defined by the federal vertical, right, than any other government in the world. And the other kind of thing, I hate saying this, and this points to the other challenge that our customers have, 60% of customers that have downtime from a natural disaster, i.e. a hurricane, 60% of them are going to have a ransomware breach within 2 to 3 weeks, right? Those bad actors know that they're vulnerable and they're going to attack that. So these are some of the challenges that we go out every single day with Blue Mantis talking to customers about. Hey, how are you protecting against cyber threats? Right? What are you doing to combat natural disasters? And also, in the wake of Broadcom and VMware, do I want to be locked into a cloud, right? Maybe I need some flexibility. So those are some of the challenges, again, from a Zerto HPE perspective that we're talking to customers day in and day out. Next slide, Sam. And we really kind of get into, okay, Zerto, who are you and what you do, right? We've been in business since 2009 offering disaster recovery. One thing I will say, and I'm sure Sam's going to bear repeating it later, there's a fine line that backup and disaster recovery are not the same thing. I think our industry has been taught for a very long time, okay, I'm going to buy backup. That's my technology. That's my software, maybe even my hardware. And in the event of a disaster recovery situation, I'm going to pull from backup. What I will tell you today, Zerto stands for zero RTO. There is no one in the market that offers a lower RPO, recovery point objective, and RTO, recovery time objective, than Zerto. Zerto was then acquired in October of 2020 from HPE for that reason. We've now expanded that reach to offer ransomware resilience. I'll allow Sam to kind of talk about that from a technology perspective. The other thing I will take away is number 3 here is multi-cloud mobility, right? We are a software-based, hypervisor-based replication. What does that mean? That means we sit in the same parallel in an environment as, for instance, VMware. So if a customer goes, I want to stay in VMware, but I want to have VMware at different locations and I want to replicate those mission critical applications with Zerto, we can do that. If they're, hey, you know what? Maybe I want to move more to AWS. Maybe I'm becoming more of an Azure shop. Maybe I'm investing in GreenLake from an HPE perspective. We offer a lot of that flexibility, all wrapped again around what we call continuous data protection. I will say there are other vendors out there with a similar talk track, right? But again, this is the gold standard and has been for a very long time when it offers conversation around disaster recovery. Next slide, Sam. And if we kind of talk about Zerto a little bit more, and again, I don't want to steal any Sam's thunder, but this is kind of how it looks. You know, our customers can get up and running with Zerto within the same day, right? And we'll talk about why that is. But just to kind of paint the picture as before I throw it over to Sam here, who's been with us for many years, is I think we all at least have heard of Colonial Pipeline, right? And this is not a bash of Colonial Pipeline in any way, shape, or form. They have a very large, well-known backup solution, and they still do. But how that hack happened, they determined that going to their backup solution to restore, right, would have taken them 90 days. They are now a Zerto customer. Their time is now 10 minutes. If I leave you with anything today is this: we don't replace anything in your environment. We simply add to what you already have: Cohesity, Rubrik, Veeam, Commvault, Veritas, whatever, from a backup perspective. Software only, hypervisor based. It's very easy to get up and running. What that all manifested for me, and how I work from a sales perspective, at the end of the day, this is a business conversation. Right now, I would say this, and Tim, you kind of said it very eloquently earlier. It is not a question of if, it is a question of when you're going to have downtime. A lot of this conversation today is around ransomware, but if this audience was Florida, it would be about hurricanes. If I was talking to customers in California, it's about wildfires. You will have downtime this year. The question now is, how much can you actually accept? What are those mission critical applications? Have you defined those RPOs and RTOs, and what is acceptable? From a Zerto perspective, we kind of tend to care about 20% of our customers' environment, those tier 0, tier 1, tier 2 mission critical applications. We're talking CAD for a police department. We're talking accounting for a financial customers. What are those applications? If they go down, you're getting a phone call. And again, as I kind of end here, there's no one that can offer you to get back up and running quicker than Zerto, and it's based upon our technology. And with that, Sam, I'll throw it over to you to talk about that.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Tim. As mentioned, my name is Sam Drogan. I'm one of the senior solution engineers here at HPE, focusing on the disaster recovery technologies we have. And as mentioned, we're going to talk about Zerto today. I'm going to dive a little bit more technical on this. Feel free to put any questions into the chat as I'm going. I want to make sure you walk away with a better understanding of how we can help reduce downtime in your environment, right? So let's focus on the core technology of Zerto. What is it providing for you, and how is it providing it? So this idea of Zerto is the idea of continuous data protection. As things change in your in your environment, we're going to take a copy of that data and move it elsewhere. So instead of just doing a nightly backup or a snapshot every couple of hours, we're doing it in near real time as those changes occur, getting another copy. But it's not just traditional, hey, let's take a copy of our production site and send it to a backup site. We actually allow you to send that same copy of your data up to 3 target locations. So for example, you have a local copy, an offsite copy, maybe even a cloud copy, or a different hypervisor, or a different state. And by having those multiple copies of your data, you can recover from the right downtime in the right location. So let's say you have one of the most common causes of downtime, human error. Someone accidentally deletes something, fat fingers a table and makes the data unusable. You can simply rewind in time, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 minutes, in the same physical location without having to deal with any of the offsite complexity. Let's say you have another common cause of downtime, a power outage at your production location. Could just be power company hit a line, could be a flood, tornado. Simply go to your secondary location, your backup location, recover there, be back up and running. But let's say there's a more catastrophic accident, right? Something like a statewide natural disaster, something like a ransomware event. You now have the option to also recover in a tertiary location, maybe even one on a different hypervisor, a cloud-based recovery, all from that same single pane of glass, you can recover to the right location for the right outage. And again, as you can see here, it's not just say VMware to VMware. We support all different hypervisors, all sorts of public clouds, Hyper-V, Azure, AWS, HP, GreenLake. Obviously, we love the HP technology here, but the benefit of a agnostic software is we go to the technology that your business is using and don't try and make you replace anything you don't need to. So diving a little bit more into that journaling, I mentioned this earlier. This idea of CDP is because we're taking the data so often, every 5 to 10 seconds, we can get you back up and running with much less data loss than your traditional backup technologies. You have a backup at 10 o'clock last night. You have a snapshot, 4 hours ago. You can't do it any more often because it's going to impact your production environment. That's just how that technology works. Well, if you get hit with a disaster at 9:59 and 55 seconds, you have to go back a couple seconds with Zerto. It's great. You lose a couple seconds of data, you're back up and running. You have to use a backup. You're going to last night. You just lost a day's worth of data. And what I always like to say is, imagine it's your busiest day of the year, right? Worst case scenario, you're a retailer, it's the day before a major holiday. That's a lot of money you just lost 24 hours versus 5 seconds. But even on the best day of the year, it's so much easier to get back up and running with 5 seconds of data loss than 24 hours. Now, as mentioned, it's not just the time frame of backup versus CDP. It's also the ability to have granular level recovery. So those of you unfortunate enough to have to recover from an incident, which is most of us on the call, I'd imagine, that it's not just, hey, bring that backup up and start it up. You have to make sure all of that data is aligned, and you have a app server that might have been backed up at a different time than that web server, than that database server. It's sort of pausing, quiescing, finding out exactly where in time that database was to make that application actually work. That's just the nature of how backups work. Well, with the continuous data protection, you don't have to worry about that. Logically, ahead of time, before a disaster occurs, you group your individual virtual machines into application consistent groupings. By doing that, we get the same point in time checkpoint across all of the VMs that make up that application. So when you recover, it's as simply as saying, I need this application up and running, and Zerto is going to handle the rest to make sure you're at that exact right point in time. And as I mentioned, it's not just that we work with some of these other vendors I talked about. We actually have deep integrations with the engineering teams on all of these different platforms. And we allow you to do more than just disaster recovery. For example, we do things like immutable backups to AWS and Azure. So you have CDP when you need your disaster recovery, but we also provide the additional benefit of immutable backups if you need. We also allow you to go to the right cloud at the right time. I mentioned retail earlier. A lot of companies I've talked to during those holiday seasons, they need to expand their environment more than can be done on-prem during their key peak business hours. So we have companies that use Zerto to migrate to the cloud during their peak, say for colleges enrollment times, for retail, their peak shopping times, run in the cloud when they need the server power, and then use Zerto to migrate back on-prem so that the majority of the year they can do their lower cost on-prem environment. So reducing downtime isn't just about disasters, it's about making sure your environment runs at the right location at the right time. And I do want to mention, again, being an HP company now, we do integrate great with HP GreenLake. We actually have a specific product called HP GreenLake for disaster recovery. It's built right into the GreenLake cloud platform. Happy to talk more about that on a future call if anybody would like to dive into more detail, but it has all of the benefits of GreenLake, that single pane of glass, that unified reporting structure, that unified structure of permissions, role-based permissions. So it does integrate great with that as well. Now, I don't just want to tell you about how great we think Zerto is. I do want to give some examples of customers who have put their name behind Zerto. United Airlines, for example, they have over 4,000 virtual machines they protect with Zerto, and they have an average recovery point objective of 8 seconds. You know, lose 8 seconds worth of data. And they came to us for their ticketing system. They knew they had issues. They actually had a major outage several years ago, and that cost them untold amounts of money. I'm sure someone there can tell you. We don't, but they realized they needed a better solution. They came to Zerto. Not just airlines, we actually have software companies, Fortune 10 customers, Jack Henry. All of them have thousands and thousands of VMs with that minimal RPO. But I want to be clear, it's not just the largest of the largest. We have several school districts, towns, as Justin mentioned, police departments, that everybody has critical applications that they need protected, and you need to put that to the gold standard, and that is that CDP technology, that is Zerto. Now, as mentioned, we do want to talk a little bit more about our newest offering, our cyber recovery offering, our Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault. So while I'm sure you all know sort of it's a big challenge in the industry, I do want to talk a little bit more about why we felt the need to dive even deeper into cyber resilience than our standard Zerto offering. Right. So first is cyber resilience is hard. There's no two ways about it. You know, you have to get it right every time to protect your environment. The hackers just have to get it right once, and you don't know how they're going to come in. You don't know how deep they get in once you realize there's an issue. Your backups can be infected, and honestly, once something bad happens, you're going to be down for longer than you find acceptable. And so traditional backup technology doesn't meet the needs of dealing with cyber recovery. And let's just look at how that occurs, why that occurs. Well, first of all, nearly all ransomware attacks try and hit those backups as well, because they know if it's just as easy as going to last night's backups, you're never going to pay to get that out of there. So they know to try and come after those. Over half of those attempts were successful in getting those backups. So they're pretty good at what they do. Organizations, like I said, if they can just go to last night's backup, most people have that backup, they're not going to pay. So those backups that were infected, they're more likely to pay. And the recovery costs when those backups were hit, they skyrocket. Because again, it's not just paying that ransom and hoping they unlock it. It's now dealing with the fallout and trying to get that to not happen again in the future. So how did Zerto go about thinking about how do we protect that, right? Well, first, our number one piece is our core technology, our replication and our detection. Built into the Zerto technology is the ability to track encryption as it occurs. As I mentioned with CDP, we're tracking changes in real time. So what better way to detect encryption than looking at changes as they're occurring? Then with our cyber resilience vault, we added the ability to isolate those recovery points and lock those in a vault-based architecture. So you have that traditional 3-2-1 level architecture, having multiple copies of the data, multiple locations, multiple recovery types, including, and this is the key part here, that immutable copy of your backup, immutable copy of your data. Of that Zerto journal. And then once you have that locked away, as we all mentioned multiple times on the call, it's not a matter of if, it's when. So when you get hit and when you need to recover, you need to be able to be sure that you're recovering to a clean point in time of your data, make sure it actually works, And then that recovery needs to be as easy as possible. So those were sort of the three main focus areas, right? Make sure you have the data and detect it as soon as there's an issue. Make sure that data you have is locked, air-gapped, and clean, and then make sure you can verify that data is clean and actually recover from it. So this is what it looks like in the system, right? This is built into core Zerto technology. As you see, we have checkpoints every 5 to 10 seconds. But if you notice, we actually have marked when we have suspicious activity right into our recovery points, so that when you go to recover, you could say, hey, I want to check before that. And we can actually spin all this up in an isolated test environment at that clean point. So you don't need to just take our word for it that we believe it's safe. You can go root around, check your files, make sure the ransomware is truly not sitting in there dormant before you actually have to do a full recovery. So that isolated test environment is so key when recovering, to verify that your environment is going to be safe when it comes up. And by taking advantage of those three main focus areas, we've designed what we call our Cyber Resilience Vault. This is a combination of the best in breed, that gold standard Zerto technology, with the trusted reliability of HPE hardware, allowing you to have that isolated environment, that vault environment for your replicated journal. And it is purpose-built, custom designed just for cyber resiliency and recovering from a cyber attack. And the whole point of this is your last resort, right? It's one of those things, break glass in case of emergency. If you're just recovering from a power outage, you're recovering from a fat finger, use traditional Zerto, right? Use that checkpoint. This is, the hackers got in, they infiltrated, I'm in a world of hurt. This is where this comes in and truly is going to prevent your business from the worst case scenario. And you may have heard of other organizations using Vault, but this comes back to the key differentiators between backup-based technology and journal-based technology. This is a real example where a customer has 300 VMs, 300 terabytes of data, and they want to recover from that worst of the worst cyber attack. Well, with a traditional backup-based vault from a backup vendor, the last good copy of your data could be a day, could be 2 days ago. You go into a backup that's sent to the vault, right? So first they need to back it up, only done once every 24 hours. Then they need to send it to the vault. Typically, they don't do that every day. Then how long does it take to recover that backup, right? If this is a whole environment come up and running, that's going to take days, right? First, you got to scrub the existing environment. Then you have to find which backup is clean. Then you have to attach it. And it's literally takes weeks for them to get back up and running. And just imagine you tell your boss, yeah, we can recover from ransomware. We'll be back up and running in 2 months. What world is that acceptable, right? Let's look at Zerto, right? Taking advantage of the Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault. Again, because that process is automated, because we're using the journaling-based technology to send that copy of the data, it's going to be much more often that we can vault that guaranteed good copy of the data. So we're talking about 4 hours or less. Recovery, because it's automated, because you can spin up that test environment on the fly, because the applications are grouped logically. Again, we're talking about hours to recover. And the total impact, yeah, it may suck to lose about a half a day to a ransomware attack, but it's going to be a lot better than weeks. And again, it's the only journal-based solution for cyber recovery when we have here with Zerto. And so the last thing I want to go back to is, just like I mentioned with Zerto, I want to talk some real customers. Now, obviously with cyber attacks, customers are a little less likely to be willing to give their name to be out there publicly, but this is one of the leading banks in the Western US, and they had an audit coming up where they had to pass a compliance report to prove, hey, if you want insurance for your bank, if you want to be able to get paid out in the event of a disaster, you need to prove that you have mitigation in place. And they had a traditional backup technology like many customers do. That wasn't good enough for them. They ran through the numbers and the insurance company said no. So what did they do? They came to Zerto, they reached out, they took a look at the cyber resilience vault, and we were able to prove, again, those numbers on the previous page. They'd lose at most a couple hours worth of data. They'd be back up and running within a couple of hours, and they were able to pass that compliance report and get that insurance they need to be able to run their business. And with that, I do want to pass it back over to Justin for a couple more success stories. Justin?
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Sam. And Sam, before I kind of dive into some success stories as well from our side of the house, it's interesting. I was in Anaheim last week for the HPE Public Sector Partner Roadshow. Yes, that is a mouthful to say. But it was what you just said kind of brought me back to a moment that I had last week. And there was a gentleman who kicked off the presentation, spent a lot of time in the federal government, now as part of HPE. And he was sharing some slides about the evolving technology landscape. And what he had said is that my IT, and this is again in the 1970s, my IT is not good enough for today. And what you just said, Sam, took me to that same place, is that traditional infrastructure of I have backup, disaster recovery event, it's not good enough. It just isn't. The average time a customer needs, on average, a customer spends 1 month recovering from a ransomware breach. I was recently flying up to Boston. I live here in North Carolina, and I'm not going to name them, but it said Blank Healthcare hopes to have their data back next week. And I was like, in what world can you just be down for multiple weeks and still have operational business, right? And the other really bad thing, and this starts talking about some of those use cases from a Zerto perspective, that healthcare, not only did they get hit with ransomware, only 4% of customers who actually pay ransomware get all their data back. In the state of Florida, for example, you're not allowed to pay ransomware. But the bad thing about that healthcare example is not only did they get hacked and get the exportation to all this financial impact, but those bad actors have actually gone in and changed the prescriptions of their patients, right? So again, this is the nefarious behavior that, again, modern IT is not equipped to handle, which is why we're having such success from a Zerto perspective, and now to include a vault. We have a very large state government on the East Coast that had been a customer with us, protecting around 200 VMs. They're now going to over 1,000. That is giving them the ability to almost act as a quasi MSP for a lot of these sub agencies. We have another customer, a very large school district in Pennsylvania, and their comment was, Zerto, it just works for us. I was in California recently, and we have a very well-known power and water company, right? And this is in the wake of President Biden saying a lot of those facilities are being attacked from a cyber threat. And he never said the word immutable, air gap, zero trust. But he basically said that you need some sort of place to clean your data and not let it impact you, as tradition has been, i.e. a great segue to our vault. And that customer told me after lunch, because of Zerto, I can sleep at night. And I was about to go like, sir, can you repeat that again? Here's the form, the sign. And that's the kind of the point. We're a very great technology company. And as soon as we get over the hurdle with our customers that this is in addition to backup, we are finding very, very good success. And I'll leave you with one more opportunity that we are working. It is with a very well-known city. They're looking at the vault, right? Which is, again, in all HPE purpose-built appliances, where Zerto Classic can sit on any hardware you have, Pure Storage, Dell, whatever. The vault, again, is an all HPE solution, but that's really going to allow them to do, again, continuous data protection, automated failover. And now in the event that these facilities are being hacked, right, they now know they have that failsafe. And again, that's the vault from a Zerto perspective. Tim, I know you have some examples to share, which might also align to a question that we had in the chat. So I'll throw it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. So yes, one of our attendees asked, say our business is considering a move away from VMware due to the new licensing costs. Can Zerto help us migrate from our existing on-prem VMware to a public or private cloud provider? We're nodding our heads up and down like a couple of bobbleheads over here, but yes, it absolutely can. It's actually one of the more common use cases for Zerto here. Though Zerto is synonymous with disaster recovery, I've been lucky enough over the course of my career to use this technology far more frequently for migrations and planned data center migrations than an actual disaster recovery scenario, thankfully, right? Whether a client is moving from one physical data center to another or migrating from on-prem to Azure, or even a different hypervisor like Hyper-V, Zerto can help. So Zerto lets you replicate your data efficiently, plan, and then test those failovers for an efficient cutover process. So migration is a huge use case. There's also a different licensing method for this. If this is your only use case, what we see customers do here is, they'll typically you purchase Zerto for the DR use case, and then maybe, okay, while I'm using it to protect, maybe I'm using it for migration temporarily. I'll migrate my workloads up to Azure, and then I can use Zerto again to protect my workloads once they're up in Azure. So migration's great use case, in addition to the tried and true disaster recovery. Right, we have a number of different customers of ours who have been using Zerto for many, many years. Maybe they started on Site Recovery Manager back in the early days of VMware. I think for those who take disaster recovery seriously, and I've heard the team use the term, the gold standard, Zerto has been the gold standard for disaster recovery of x86 workloads and VMware workloads for a long, long time. We've seen customers of ours who are located with operations in the Gulf proactively move their operations out of the Gulf come hurricane season to a more reliable, non-hurricane specific geographic region. It's worked like a charm for them. Now they're proactively moving them, most of the days of the year out of the Gulf. But for years they were moving them proactively. I think that's a common use case for Zerto in these cases. So, yep, Sam, Justin, anything to add there? Or
nothing to that. I think you did a great job covering the migration piece. I did see we had another question come in about HP's acquisition of Juniper and AI Ops. I unfortunately can't speak to anything roadmap related. Just big picture wise, as Zerto was acquired by HPE, we rolled out the Vault, took advantage of the great HP technology. I would expect similar to keep taking advantage of HP's wonderful technologies and integrate those into future solutions, but nothing I can publicly announce this time.
Got it.
Yeah, no, that's a super great question. The other thing I just kind of wanted to put out there, just kind of food for thought. HPE did announce at Discover earlier this year, we are coming to market with our own hypervisor, which is a KVM-based architecture. So again, that is just further evidence of the wherewithal and the drive of HPE to really allow customers flexibility in the wake of Broadcom. And again, being a KVM-based architecture, it does lend itself to possibly supporting other hypervisors that are KVM based, but again, don't want to speculate on those things. But again, the commitment from HPE and Zerto is really to allow customers to have an always-on environment, whether that is again on-prem, in the cloud, or anywhere in between. Excellent. Well, Tim, I know from your side of the house, I know we're going to wrap up here. If there's not any questions answered, happy to take them. But I know there's a call to action for the attendees here today, Sam. If you want to.
Yes, Sam, thank you. So and thank you very much, Justin and Sam, for your time here today, explaining a little bit more about Zerto's offerings, HPE's Zerto's offerings. So for anybody on this call who wants to see more about what Zerto can do for you and how to recover from a ransomware attack, please reach out to your account executive or me directly, and we can schedule a 30-minute demonstration. We'd be happy to get that scheduled up and get the folks from HPE, Zerto, and Blue Mantis on a call with you to show you this powerful technology. We'd be looking forward to it. So any questions, any more questions from the team, from the attendees? All right. Justin, Sam, any parting words?
No, I would just say, appreciate everyone hopping on, here during the lunch hour. Again, Zerto, maybe we're not, a household name, but again, I think once our customers really kind of dive into that, they need backup, they need disaster recovery, they are not the same. And again, not to belabor the point, we are the gold standard. Zerto, again, stands for zero RTO. We have a really good better together story with the likes of Cohesity, et cetera. And again, really appreciate your time. And since it is lunch hour, I will say this, your backup is, Tim, I don't know if you're going to say this before, but like backup is the cheeseburger, right? We're giving you guys the bacon, that when that happens, which downtime will happen, you don't have the ability to control how much downtime is, again, right for that application. So that's my closing comment, Sam. And I don't know if you had anything else to add as well.
Yeah, I can't beat a cheeseburger, bacon cheeseburger. So thank you very much for the time today.
All right. Thank you, everyone.